All right, it is 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, so we will go ahead and begin today's webinar. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome for today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us, Creating a Family Wellness Plan and Mission Statement. Thank you for joining. My name is William Moore, and I am with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention's National Training and Technical Assistance Center, also known as NTTAC. And as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to review a few items with Adobe Connect and to provide you all with a few announcements. Please note that this webinar is brought to you by our colleagues here at the Innocent Justice Foundation. You may view their website and how to contact them on this slide. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded. The webinar will be posted on NTTAC's YouTube page where you can view other archived webinars. For the transcript and supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of the PowerPoint slides and other important documents, you may do so by locating the Handouts pod directly above the Chat pod. Here, you will also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions. Simply click on the name of the file and then click the download button. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session where the presenters will address some of the questions posed during the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. Please note that this next set of instructions are only reserved for individuals viewing today's webinar in a group with more than one person. Now, for those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. Go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you are viewing alone, there's no need to type anything into the chat window at this time. And I'll give folks just a couple of minutes to go ahead and type that in. Again, only type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today if you're attending in a group. If you're by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time. Following today's webinar, attendees will be sent a certificate of attendance. This certificate is sent approximately 1 hour following the conclusion of today's webinar and is sent via an Adobe Connect thank you email. Please keep an eye on your email for your certificate. Please note that only individuals who are virtually signed in to today's webinar will receive a certificate. At the conclusion of today's webinar, you will be provided with a link to a brief survey about today's presentation. The feedback you provide is used to assist in future planning and training. I will now turn today's webinar over to Elizabeth Tao for today's presentation. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the final webinar in our summer series. My name is Elizabeth Tao, and I am the program manager for the SHIFT program. And I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a brief background on our program. The Innocent Justice Foundation started in 2009 at the urging of the Internet Crimes Against Children, or ITTAC, commanders. And they found that many criminal justice professionals were leaving their jobs due to extreme amounts of stress and vicarious trauma. And we were tasked to develop a program that presented information to mitigate the stress and trauma and normalize asking for assistance with mental health and wellness. So today we actually travel throughout the United States and provide no or low-cost trainings to criminal justice professionals that focus on child exploitation casework. We are always happy to visit with anybody who has any questions or would like more information about our services and or trainings. My information will be available at the end, and I'll also be on at the end and available for questions. If you guys have any, you can sure reach out to me, and I would be happy to help. And the rest of the training is going to be given by Anthony and Carol, and they will introduce themselves and share their knowledge on creating a family wellness plan and mission statement. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Anthony and Carol, and I hope everybody has a great webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Bruska, and I am the Embedded Mental Health Provider for the New Mexico ITTAC, that's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I work with Anthony on a regular basis, as well as training for the Shift Wellness. I train for them as well, and also do some street outreach in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm really excited to be here today because what I've learned over the years is that having a family wellness plan and a mission statement is good for anyone. Doesn't matter what your field is, doesn't matter what kind of work you do, but it's a very important tool that you can use to help your family and those around you to have a plan for what your mission is and what your strategy is when things get stressful.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Anthony Mays. I'm the commander for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force for the state of New Mexico. I also oversee human trafficking. Been in law enforcement for over 30 years. I spent a majority of my career working violent crimes, working with people. I have found over the years that I've seen a high number of individuals burn out in all professions working with victims, and so I had the opportunity to help start developing the SHIFT program, and I was able to bring Carol on board with our task force, and we've seen some great successes, and we hope today to share some of those successes with you, some of the things that we have done with families within our state, and just some amazing things that have come out of it. So we're excited you're here today.
So first what I'd like to do is recap the series, the summer series that Elizabeth mentioned previously. One of and you'll be able to access these previous trainings, webinars if you would like to, and you can go to the SHIFT website to do that. But one of the important things that we mentioned in the previous training was the importance of resilience and how you can learn to be more resilient in your own life. We also talked about how your family can be involved with that, because one of the things that we know is that having and using support is one of the greatest indicators of resilience. So what we wanted to do to make sure that everybody that's in your life that's important to you that can be a support would know how to do that. Using happiness to increase our resilience, and that was a webinar that really dove deep into the importance of building resilience, but using your happiness to do that. And then talking about what you used to do and how we can bring back the things that brought us pleasure in our life previously and increase our resilience using those hobbies and activities that brought us happiness before. So now we're going to talk about mission statements and family wellness. But here are the previous webinars. This is Lead with Character, that's Activate Your Rescue. How is your day? A loaded question, and Happiness from the Inside Out. All of those are available, like I said, on the SHIFT website if you are interested in going back to review those. So today's objectives, we are going to be talking about what is a wellness plan. We're going to be going into great detail about what it is and how you can create one. What is a mission statement? Many of you have probably heard of mission statements with regard to businesses, but this is one that you can create for yourself. Discuss the benefits of having wellness tools in place, and discuss the positive impact the wellness tools can have on you and your family. So when we're talking today, we're going to be talking about wellness plans and mission statements for individuals as well as for your family. What we like to do is encourage people to create their own plans and then create one that includes your family so that everyone is on the same page and can support each other. So what is a wellness plan? A wellness plan is it's an action plan. It's about things, activities that you will do. It's about taking action. How will you take action to keep yourself well? How will you take action to create an opportunity for wellness and happiness in your life? And like it says here, it's a multidimensional plan, so it's going to be not just in one area, like I'm going to exercise for my wellness plan, or I'm going to go to the doctors on a regular basis. It includes 6 different areas that you can use so that you can be well in all areas. So we want to make sure that you have a plan for emotional wellness, meaning what can you do when you're feeling stressed out, a social wellness plan, meaning how can you use your supports and gain more supports, educational employment wellness plan, so what can you do to make yourself as healthy as possible during your work or educational areas. Spiritual practice, because this is so important, as many people find their spiritual practice is their foundation, and in order to have a solid life outside of work and in work, you need to have a solid foundation, and that can be a spiritual foundation. Environmental, so those are the things that are around you that you do outside of work. And intellectual, what are you doing to stimulate your intellect to make sure that you have a wellness plan in all areas? It's also a multidimensional plan, meaning that from the emotional, first we'll go over the emotional, that's understanding our own or our family's emotional needs. So again, like I spoke previously, this is not just about you, this is for you and your family. If you are an individual that is not very connected to their family, you could certainly use this as your own plan, but if you have a family, then please include them. So what are the emotional needs of your family? Do they, is there specific needs that they might have around the time that you spend with them or the way you interact with them? Are there emotional needs around what your children need? Understanding what we need to maintain emotional stability. So what looks in your family like emotional stability? Does it mean that there's screaming, yelling kids and a stressed out spouse? Or does that mean that people feel comfortable talking about things and can maintain their emotional stability, are calm and relaxed, that people can come into the house and feel like this is their safe haven? And understanding what our challenges are to emotional stability. So once we know what emotional stability looks like for you and your family, then we can figure out what it looks like when things are off kilter. So if we know that our desire is to have a calm, relaxed household, then what are the challenges that throw that off, and then how can we mitigate those effects? So from a social aspect, we want to make sure that what kind of social needs do you and your family have? So that could be, you know, maybe one person in the family has lots of social needs and the other person is more withdrawn and likes to stay home. So how do you strategize to make sure that each person in the family has their needs met? Or if you're an individual, how do you make sure that you have your own needs met? Do you need to go out and socialize more often? Do you need to come back and spend more time alone? And then, like it says, it explains how our family got their social needs met. So maybe somebody likes to get their social needs met by talking on the phone or being on social media. Somebody else gets their social needs met by hanging out with their peers in the afternoon. Maybe mom or dad likes to go to the brew pub on Friday night and just kind of decompress. So what does that look like in your family? And then explains the social part of the wellness plan explains where these differ and where they overlap. So it's important to understand how each individual gets their needs met so that there can be a plan that incorporates all of that. So if one person feels like their social needs are met by staying at home on a Friday night because they've been interacting all week long, and another member feels like they need to go out, how do you work that? How do you negotiate that so that everyone has their needs met?
So that's interesting, Carol, that we're discussing that. I was actually this weekend, I have a 13-year-old and a 19-year-old, or actually 17-year-old daughter. My son's 19, and my 13-year-old and 17-year-old daughters are just complete opposites. One's more of an introvert, the other's more of an extrovert, and it's interesting because just going school shopping, my 17-year-old just doesn't like it, and she's either Dad, can I just order everything online? And where my 13-year-old is like, let's hit every store possible. We're at the mall. And as a parent, and I'm sure many of you have experienced that, is that you find that happy medium for both of them. So I find that sometimes as a parent you end up splitting your time, but it's part of their social needs. And it's interesting how that can actually help develop a better and strong plan to keep your family healthy.
The plan also includes educational and employment needs. So what does it look like? And I'm sure we can go over this, and Anthony will talk for a moment because he's got several people that are currently in school at his house. So it explores what our goals are for employment and education and what our family's goals are, and then how do we know we're on track. So Anthony, you want to fill us in on everybody in your house and how they're all going to school right now and how you guys manage that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So not only are my children in school, so I have my wife's going back to school, and my 19-year-old is going to school with my wife, which is kind of fun. And then my 17-year-old and 13-year-old, they were both homeschooled pretty much from day one. And this is their second year of school, so everyone goes their own different direction. And definitely that's been interesting for everyone. I guess the plus to it all is that everyone goes to bed a little bit early at night, and I get my alone time. But it's interesting how it's easy for a family to get how they could all have a common goal. For example, in this time it's the school, but they're all going different directions. So trying to keep everyone on track is really important.
And the spiritual part of the wellness plan is very important. So it's what each member understands is their spiritual path. Now, if you have children in the household, oftentimes their spiritual path echoes the spiritual path of their parents. But, you know, there could be, as teenagers get older and they try to reach out and see what is important to them and how they can lead their life, sometimes they might have a different spiritual path. But having a real understanding of what your spiritual path is so very crucial when it comes to creating a mission statement and a wellness plan. Because if you have a spiritual practice, that oftentimes can, like I said previously, be what your foundation is, and it can be what your guiding path is. So if one person has no spiritual path, and another person has a very in-depth spiritual path, how do you mesh those so that everyone is on the same page and respectful of each other? And, you know, how the spiritual path guides your life choices. And oftentimes that's one of the things that we talk about when we're talking about individuals working ICAT cases or individuals working with child exploitation, they're working with child abuse. Having a spiritual path is important because it helps us define what is important to us. But I do know that having a spiritual practice of some kind can be important to in any field, and having that foundation to know what guides us in our life can always be crucial. So it also includes an environmental wellness part of the plan. And this is how we are impacted by our environment. So what this means is how, you know, do we get along well with our neighbors? Do we, what is our role in our community? What kind of things are important to us when we think about our role in the community and what we want to accomplish within our own community? And then understanding, does our family have any role in this right now together that we can include as part of our social support, so that we as a family are united and are willing to share what's important to us as part of our environmental wellness plan. Intellectually, what do we need to feed us intellectually? So in Anthony's house, there's lots of feeding going on through their education. But does it mean that we need to go to lectures, or does that mean that we need to go to the ballet for a cultural experience? Does it mean that we need to read books together? Maybe as part of the intellectual wellness plan, the family will decide that they're going to have a family book club and have that as what's going to be intellectually stimulating. Anthony, do you have any intellectual stimulating activities in your house?
One of the things that my 17-year-old now does on a regular basis, and she's my introvert, is that she learns a new difficult word that no one else in the house would know every day. And then she uses it in a sentence, and she tries to get everyone to guess what she's talking about. And it's a lot of fun because my 13-year-old is actually very, very bright, and it stumps her. And she's more, again, she's the extrovert and always the social butterfly. And she's like, how do you know this? So, but that's just all part of the intellectual process. It seems like it brought her out of her little shell, and it gives her the opportunity to engage with the rest of the family more so by just having fun with words.
So what is a family mission statement? So what we've been talking about was the wellness plan, what things you want to consider when you're creating a wellness plan, but what is a mission statement? So like it says here, it lays out the vision for your family of where you want to go together. So just like if I was a CEO of a company and I wanted to know what our goals were, I would create a mission statement that said, these are the things that we value as a company, this is the direction that we want to take, these are the things that we'll know whether we're on track or off track. You take that same idea and bring it to your family. So it lays out the vision for how you want to get there. It provides a path, a guidepost pointing the way ahead, and then point out the bumps along the way. So how will we know if we're going there, and then what it's going to look like if we're off track? So the purpose of the mission statement is similar, like I said, to a business mission statement. It defines what you as a family feel is a success and helps you know if you're on course. The reason that this is so beneficial and helpful is because as a family, it can keep us united. It can have a mission, a purpose that we are all on board with, and it can bring us a sense of oneness and can increase our communication as well. So it defines what is important to us. It defines how your family is different from other families, defines the role of each family member, and defines the shared objectives. So, like, again, if you compare this to a business mission statement, it's very similar. There's things that as a business we want to make sure we cover, and these are the same things of each of the mission statement. I like the part about the defining the roles of each member because then each member can feel important. It's not just mom and dad are the important pieces, and so what we're hoping is that each person will be able to understand their role and take that responsibility seriously and realize that they're an important part of the whole family.
Yeah, you know, we did something like this, and we had found that my children found that there's a lot of differences between families, and they didn't realize that till we sat down and talked about some of their friends and some of their families and what they do and some of the rituals that they have in place. And for example, with our family, every Friday night it's pizza night. It's been pizza night since they were able to make a little dough ball. We actually make our own pizza, and it's been tradition forever. I mean, now, and it's something that they enjoy, and they find that other families do something similar, where and then again, some other families are not that engaged. But that's important for our families to see that and make that part of the mission statement, to have a ritual in place, something that they can think about and something they can go back to. We see that, and I think we forget that sometimes, because even this weekend we were looking at family photos, and my kids started to remember all the things that we did when they were little, and how we continue to do that, and how that's just part of our family makeup, and how we do that to this day as they get older.
So here, the next several slides are going to talk about how to create a family mission statement. We don't have time to go in depth to every single one of these, but because you will get the slides, you will have the opportunity to go much more in depth than we will today. And if you have any questions following this webinar, you can certainly contact us to ask us questions. But this goes step by step on how to create a family mission statement. So make the process a celebration of the family. So it's not going to be we're going to sit down and we're going to crank this out like homework. It's going to be a process where you're going to consider what are the strengths of our family, what are the how can we benefit from a wellness or mission statement and a wellness plan, how can how can we gain strength from this and recognize that we are unique and united at the same time. So each member can think of what's important to them and then come together when everybody is willing to do that at a time when everyone's available and able to be there physically and mentally. And then realize that the process is actually more important than the end product. So the process is important because it gives you the opportunity to have a conversation with your family about things that you might never have spoken with them previously about. And then you want to make sure that you set some ground rules for the process as well so it doesn't get sidetracked or delayed or turn into a big discussion that doesn't have any progress. So one of the rules that you might consider is one person speaks at a time. We understand the purpose of this is so that each person feels valued and heard, and each person has the opportunity to kind of think about what's important to them. And then each person's idea and thought has value, so the person who's going to lead this mission statement meeting wants to make sure that they're reminding everyone that each person's idea and thought has value. And then one person will be the person that writes everything down, and the process doesn't need to be completed in one setting, particularly if there's a couple different children or you've never had any conversations around this before. It might take a while because these are brand new thoughts and concepts that it might take much longer than you would initially think. And if there's younger children, it might need to be in several short sessions so the children don't get distracted and then lose track. You also want to think about some questions to start the process. So if it's just a couple, you want to think, what kind of marriage partners do we want to be? What is the purpose of our marriage? How do we want to treat each other? And how do we want to resolve our differences? So as a marriage and family therapist, this is something that I highly encourage partners to do before they get married, to see even if they're on the same page. But if you've been in a marriage for a while and you've got a family, or you're just dating someone and you really want to think about creating a mission statement as a couple, start these questions, because oftentimes as a couple we just assume that we know what our partner is thinking, or we just assume that we have a common understanding of how we want to treat each other or how we're going to resolve our differences because of our family of origin ways of doing those. But it's important to have that conversation so that we can make sure we're on the same page. Some other questions you might want if you're a couple: how can we both support each other in our respective goals? I don't know if Anthony and his wife had this discussion when they got married about how they would support each other if one of them decided to go back to school, but if not, I'm sure they probably had that conversation when she decided to go back to school, and how were they going to manage that?
Yeah, that's true. It's when I actually went back to school, it's been about 15 years now, and she supported me with that effort. And we decided that our children would actually be homeschooled, so she stayed home and raised our children. And I went to school with the promise that I would continue a career where I could be able to support with just one income. And now it's her turn. So we did discuss that, and she's on her way. And then, of course, eventually we'll have two incomes coming in.
Which will always be a lovely thing. So that leads to our next question: how do we want to handle finances? So it sounds like they had the conversation around during part of their marriage. He would be working, and then eventually that they will both be working. So that's, again, an important conversation to have. And then what kind of parents do we want to be? Again, this is one of those things that people don't often talk about, but it's so crucial, because if you aren't on the same parenting page with respect to discipline, with respect to what's important, with respect to what kind of values you want to raise your children with, things can become quite quickly, they could go downhill. So here's some more sample questions for a couple. What principles do we want to teach our children to help them prepare for adulthood? Now, I can almost guarantee that probably not too many people have this conversation before they have children, because we just kind of think about them from our own perspective, but don't actually sit down as a couple to have this conversation. What roles will each of us have? So who's going to be the disciplinarian, or is it going to be both of us? Who's going to be the one that's going to sit with the child when it's time to for homework? Or do you take some homework and I take another? And then how can we best relate to each other's family? So how do we split up the holidays, or do we split up the holidays? What traditions do we bring with us from our families in which we were raised? So all of these are crucial questions to ask in the process of making a mission statement. And then also, what traditions do we want to keep and create? So I know when my brother got married, my oldest brother got married, he and his wife decided that one of their traditions would be to celebrate Christmas in Arizona instead of coming to New Mexico to celebrate with the rest of the family. It was difficult at first to get used to it, but we had to honor their request because obviously it's their family. They need to do what's best for them. So think about that, particularly if you are planning on having children and don't have any yet. How are you going to handle that? And how do we want to give back as a family? What's important to us? Do we want to give back to our community through volunteer work, through some other strategy? Maybe do we want to foster some children? Do we want to have some other activity that can make us feel like we're giving back? And are there things from our respective family histories that we're happy or unhappy with, and how can we change them? You don't want to go into a relationship carrying that old baggage. If you're aware of that, then you can get rid of that baggage and move forward in a more smooth method. For families of 3 or more, so maybe you have a child or so, what's the purpose of our family? What kind of family do you want to be? So we can see that this is similar to what we had for the couple. What kind of feeling do we want to have in our home? So do we want to have a home where everyone comes home and notices it's a quiet, calm place? Do we want to have a home where there's lots of laughter and music? What kind of feeling do we want to have when we come home? What kind of home would you like to invite your friends to? So I know that Anthony, because of the ICAC work he does, he likes to have the kids come to his house. So Anthony, what kind of home did you talk about with your family about having so that your kids could have people to come over?
It's interesting. It ended me because of the field we're in, and within law enforcement, where we find ourselves to be hyper-vigilant. But so I say yes all the time. So can a friend come over? Yes, sure they can. Of course, but I've had to accommodate that. Of course, it's going to take a little bit more effort on my side because we have extra friends over. I'm going to have to think about. I'm going to feed them. We're going to have provide entertainment, which isn't too hard in this day and age. But having that available. So yeah, it's something to think about is what kind of environment that you're going to have open to the public, basically, to your friends, to your kids' friends.
And I love the next question, what embarrasses you about our family? I think that's a great question to ask the kids, and because the answers that you get, can be very interesting. I know when my son and I have this conversation when he was younger, he would say it was embarrassing to him that I would sing in the car when I was driving him to school. So, and then he gave me a list of other things that embarrassed him. Some of them were silly, like the way I would drive to school, the way I would do other things. But yet, although he told me that I embarrassed him, he was always wanting to invite his friends to stay over and inviting them for dinner and making them feel welcome. So even though I embarrassed him, that was overridden by the fact that his friends were welcome and they could feel comfortable and that they were welcome in the home and they could be there to do what they wanted to do and in a relaxed situation. So what makes you want to come home is our next question. And that's something that, we might not really have an answer for right off the bat. It's what is it that makes you want to come home? Or is there something that makes you not want to come home? And if that's the case, how can we address that? And then what do we want to be remembered by? This, again, can be kind of difficult for children if they're very young. And even up to the teen years, they don't think about in terms of what they want to be remembered by. But this is crucial because it sets the tone for what are the things that we want to accomplish in this lifetime, and how can we make sure that those are things that were important that we can be remembered by.
And I think it's, especially with all of us in our professions, that we model that role on what we want to be remembered by. It's something that my children and I talk about. They talk about me being a police officer and how proud they are and everything that we do in both ICAC, of course, and human trafficking, and over the years. And my 13-year-old actually made a comment this last weekend that she goes, Dad, I want to be a vet because I want to be remembered by that. Because you're remembered by people, I want animals to remember me. And I said, yeah, that'll work. So what do they want to be remembered by? And I found that's very important to ask each individual member of the family. And it really shoots a goal for them too. They strive to maybe meet that, and you can actually help them accomplish that by doing things for them in their lives.
So some more questions. What kind of relationships do we want to have with one another? So this is always an interesting question to ask for siblings because on one hand, it's, you know, somebody wants to be in charge, but somebody else doesn't, or there's bickering children, or they want to have a relationship where nobody gets in anybody else's room or borrows anybody else's things. But realistically, most of the time, at least with my siblings when I was growing up, we could fight with each other, but nobody dare fight with us, or they would be in big trouble. So nobody was more of an ally to us when there was somebody else trying to get into our lives. But we could fight with each other all we wanted. And then how do we want to treat one another and speak to one another? So what are the things that we cannot say or do not want to say? How do we resolve conflict? How do we talk to each other when things are hard? And what are things that are truly important to us as a family? So what are the things that when we think about our family, what are the things, are we a family that follows a particular spiritual path? Are we a family that is active in our community? Are we a family that is kind to one another? What are important to us? And what are the unique gifts and talents and abilities of family members? So maybe someone is a very good writer, and maybe they can do a family diary or the family Christmas letter. Maybe someone else is very artistic and creative, and how can they use that talent? Maybe someone else is very organized. So each person in the family will have their own individual strengths, and then how can the family as a whole use those and recognize those strengths in others? For families of 3 or more, again, what are our responsibilities as family members? So if there's something happening, who is responsible for making sure that's taken care of? If we have trash cans that need to be emptied, who's the responsible party? If there's light bulbs that need to be replaced, if there's an emergency that happens, what does that look like? So all of those are what are our responsibilities. And then what are the principles and guidelines we want our family to follow? And again, all of these things are going to be individual and unique to your family, but the questions can start the process of making us really think what our family would like to look like. And who are our heroes? So for children, oftentimes that's a superhero that they saw in a movie, but who else can be our heroes? Who can be the person that we would like to emulate, that we want our family to think of as something to strive for? What families inspire us, and what do we admire about them? So are there other families that you as your family know? Is it maybe a neighbor? Is it someone who's in the public light that we admire their family? And why do they inspire us? And then how can we contribute to society as a family and become more service-oriented? So we recognize that our family is very fortunate to have each other, and then how do we take some of that and give it back to our community? So we make a list of the family's core values. What are the values that you as a family feel are important? What are the values that inspire you? And something you cannot imagine being without. So again, if you think of something you cannot imagine being without, that might be different for each family member. But then come together and think about, of all of those things, what can you not be without? So for some child, it might be, I can't be without my teddy bear or my Legos. But then for the parents, it might be, I cannot imagine being without each of you as individuals. So have a hard conversation about that and really think thoroughly. So identify family concepts or phrases. And like it says here, these can come from movies, books, or other meaningful material. So maybe it's, we never give up. As a family, our motto is, we never give up. Or we do everything with love. Or family first. Again, this is a joint conversation to have that you and your family can consider and think about how you would like to carry that out. You want to create a list of big ideas, so review everything you have written down and decide what everyone feels defines you as a family. And then write out the mission statement. Keep it short, but grab the important concepts. Set up weekly or monthly meetings to discuss your progress. Make changes as need be. Oftentimes, weekly meetings can be over dinner where there's a family meeting and one person is the scribe and one person starts the meeting and keeps the rules. So again, this is going to be a conversation that's going to keep that ongoing mission statement updated. And please keep in mind that the mission statement is not a one-time thing. It's a live document that will change as the family changes.
You know, Carol, something that I did recently with the kids developing a mission statement is we all sat down on a Saturday morning and talked about this, and they said, well, Dad, I can't come up with anything. And I said, well, do me a favor, and every time something comes up with the questions that we've talked about today, shoot me a text. And it's interesting because once they were away from that sitting and from us getting together on a Saturday morning, and they were just hanging out in the rooms or at school or with their friends, they would shoot me a text, say, hey, Dad, I want to add this to the mission statement. And it works. I mean, so think about the way your family responds and what's the best way for them to communicate. Sometimes it doesn't work to get everybody together in one room. Sometimes it may be something like shoot me a text when something comes to mind.
So the benefits of planning for the future, planning equals prevention. So if you have a plan in place, it's much more likely when something happens, you will already know what to do. And it allows for calculated risk, so then if the family is all on board and you know what to expect and you know what your mission is, then you're more willing to take a risk, like Anthony's wife deciding, hey, I can take this jump and I can go back to school. It prepares you for challenges, and it improves your overall performance as a family to accomplish your goals. Also, it allows you to live in the moment. So if you have a plan that is in place, it allows you to say, okay, we have this plan in place, and I can go ahead and I can see what's, so we can see what we can do in this moment, and we can go ahead and feel free to living the life like we want, because we know that if things go bad, or we know that we can still keep on our plan. So it helps to find what the priorities are, and it helps to find what actions you need to take. So if you're thinking about, is our priority as a family to help out with the homeless? Is our strategy as a family to give back to the community through our church? Is our strategy as a family to make sure that regardless of what else happens, we support each other? It helps to define that and helps you know what actions you need to take. Also, it helps to understand where we need to put more productive energy or proactive energy. So this could be, maybe you're noticing that in your family there's not enough energy putting into intellectual part of your family, or maybe the social part. Maybe you've noticed that each person seems to be going their own way and you're not connecting in a way you'd like to. So this will be clear when you review your mission statement. It helps us understand when we have big successes, helps us understand where we're now, and to understand where we want to be. And it helps us when we're having some struggles about what to do for that struggle, because it's already in place. Allows us to enjoy the moment instead of perseverating on the past, because we have the plan. So we can say, we know what to do in case there's a crisis. We know what to do in case there's change. So let's just enjoy this moment and have a good time. It allows you the opportunity to follow through with people and things that are important to you, and it helps to decrease the stress of the unknown, because when you're in a situation where as many things are planned out for as possible, then the likelihood of things coming up that are going to be stressful decreases, and when those things do happen, you all know that things will be okay. How this benefits you and your family? Each family member can feel like they have an important role in the family. So each person knows what their role is and why that's important and how that person can carry out the family mission. The process of planning can increase overall communication. So in order to create a family mission statement, there has to be some communication. People have to be willing to talk. People have to be feeling comfortable that they can say what they really feel and want. And this is going to help them in different situations. So it's not going to help just when you're building your mission statement. And it allows family members to feel supported and validated. and it increases the feeling of social support. So the family will know that they can feel supported in all of their activities because they know their family has their back. So these are the references that we've used for this presentation today. Please feel free to look at those. There'll be more in-depth information on what we've discussed. And also, please feel free if you have any questions to let us know what those are.
Thank you so much, Carol and Anthony, for that webinar. I know we sometimes want some more information, so at this time we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions from the participants, and we will send those back to Carol or Anthony, or I will answer them if it applies to the company side of the Innocent Justice Foundation. So at this time, please go ahead and let us know if you have any questions. We do have one. How would this apply to single parents, parents with shared custody or visitation, individuals without children but with adult families, and couples with unhealthy extended families?
So certainly this could, a mission statement and a wellness plan can apply to anyone. So right now I am not married and I have a grown child, but I still have a mission statement and a family plan. Because I know what's important to me, and this helps me guide in that way. So it kind of keeps me in check, and it kind of lets me know what to do when I'm struggling. Part of my plan, I include my friends that are supports to me. I include family members that are supports to me as part of my strategies for wellness and as part of my mission statement. So it can work with any individual. If you are a single parent, you and your child or children can come up with a plan. You, of course, being the parent, will be in the lead, and the children will have an integral part, but you will be the one making the final decisions. Shared custody, it depends, I suppose, on if the shared custody is with a partner who is willing or interested in doing a mission statement or a wellness plan together with you. If not, then you and your children can have a mission statement and a family plan for what happens at your house. And with respect, at the same time respecting what happens at the other person's house. Individuals without children but adult families, again, this can certainly, if your adult family is willing to be part of your wellness plan, that's wonderful, because if they're a support, you want to include them in your wellness plan. You want to include them in your mission statement. And to consider that maybe, you might, you and your family members, even though they're all adults, might have a shared mission. So my siblings and I, even though we're all living independently and have very different lives, we have things that we do together as a family because it's important for us to stay connected. So you can certainly include them in your mission statement, and maybe your mission statement is, even though my family we don't live under the same roof, we have the same shared values, or something to that effect. With unhealthy extended families or without children, with or without children, again, that's something where you start with your own mission statement, and then you see who is important to you to include. So maybe that's your created family, not your family of origin. So all of those things are, they're very adaptable. You start with your own personal mission statement and then increase by including those in your life who you would like to have included. What is the best way to help dysfunctional families, substance abuse, mental health? So create a plan. So again, there's the core values, and then the dysfunction is part of the obstacles that might come up. So if there's an individual with substance abuse or mental illness, how do we support that person yet keep healthy boundaries? So that's part of the mission statement. Part of the mission statement is going to be recognizing that not every family is going to be unicorns and flowers. There's going to be families where there are problems, and how do you as a family adapt to that while staying connected and keeping each other healthy? So maybe part of that plan looks like, part of our wellness plan or our family mission statement is making sure that we're setting limits with those people, and how do we support each other in setting limits? I do not know. The next question is about, has the model ever been applied to foster care? I don't know. It certainly could, I would imagine, and I'm not sure as part of the juvenile justice either, but I'm sure that those can be included or can be adapted for that. And then there's another question, how do you start this conversation when family relations are tense and a child is oppositional and defiant? So start by thinking about, even if there's one common denominator that every person in the family feels they're on the same page about. And if you can't come up with something right away, try to think. You know, at least one of the things is we want to feel safe in this home. So maybe that's a place to start. And then it branches out from there. If our main objective here is we want to feel safe in this home, then how do we create an environment where each of us feels safe? So it can be if it's a situation that you want to make sure that that every person in the family feels safe, then what does that look like and how do we start that process?
Okay, thank you so much. And I know we have a couple people typing still, so we'll have a couple more questions coming in. So it looks like we have one that says, do you employ trauma-informed care for such plans as well, both direct and vicarious trauma?
You certainly could. You certainly could use trauma-informed care. That would be a great way to start the process, because if you're in a family where you know there's been trauma that's happened, each individual wants to consider how does that trauma impact them with respect to creating a mission statement and a family plan. Obviously, if it's your own family, you would probably have some idea of what the trauma is that they've experienced, and how you could just support that person from a trauma-informed care perspective. If someone's not confident or sure about what trauma-informed means, the SAMHSA website has a great deal of information on trauma-informed and what that looks like.
And Carol, can you write that in the chat for everybody, that website again, please?
Certainly. Let me look up the website, and I will certainly write that in the chat for everybody.
Okay. And we have another question that just came in that says, is this similar to safety planning?
Yes, I would say it's similar to safety planning, but a wellness plan is going to be a plan that's in place all the time, not just when you're in need of safety. So this is going to be a plan that you kind of live your life by. It's your family motto. It's what's important to you and how you recognize if you're on track.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so let me get that website up for everybody.
Perfect. We'll let you do that. We'll see if there's any more questions that come in. Again, we will have information, contact information for all of us at the end of the webinar, so you guys can continue to ask questions if you have them, to our great presenters and to myself if you have any. Thank you, Carol. Okay. How long did it take for families to buy into the plan?
Well, I think that's a very individualized thing. I think the person that's going to mention the idea or bring up the concept has to be very positive about it and excited about it and explain to the family why this will be a benefit. So if the attitude is, ugh, we have to do this because somebody told me it was a good idea, the plan probably won't go over very well. But if the person presenting the idea initially can say, this is going to be a great thing for us as a family because it will help bring us together and it will help us to be more supportive of each other and it will make our lives easier, then that's going to be a plan that will start to work a little bit easier. But obviously each family is individual and it could take a short time, it could take an extended conversation before you even start thinking about what the plan is. Maybe it's just having dinner and bringing up, not sitting down and formally saying we are creating a wellness plan and a family mission statement, just taking the list of questions and having a discussion about them and saying, hey family members, what do you think about this question? And so having a very casual conversation about each of the questions and then coming together to bring it in a more formalized method.
Absolutely. We always say we want to do this when things are good, not when we're in trauma or in crisis, because then we tend to not have the best answers. So definitely it is a proactive thing to talk about. Okay, we have maybe one or two more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are going to try to hold it to the hour webinar. These two questions are similar, so let's see if I can put them together. Is there a tool available to begin creating a plan for families? And then also, do you have examples that can be used as a template?
So if you use the resources at the end of our PowerPoint presentation, that will give you some templates and samples.
Perfect. And those links are able to be clicked on. They are hyperlinks. So if you do download the PowerPoint, and you can actually click within the PowerPoint, and they will take you directly to those links. You can also, of course, copy and paste them into your browser. Carol and Anthony, I hope you say or see the comment that says it's a great presentation. Going to start a plan today with the family. Thank you. I think that's awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Let's end with one more quick question here. And again, if anybody has any follow-up, you're welcome to follow up. This last one is, I grew up with the village, i.e. neighborhood, helping to raise children. My question is, with today's society where parents do not want neighbors to be involved in their private matters, how do you get neighbors involved without invading the family's privacy?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question. It's going to honestly depend on your neighbors and maybe getting to know your neighbors first. You know, maybe inviting one neighbor over to your house for some cookies and soda or something. Just maybe having a picnic or a neighborhood party, something where you can begin to know your neighbors, because we know that not all of our neighbors we're going to get along with, and we might not want any of our neighbors involved. But it's going to be, you know, that slow process of really getting to know your neighbors. And then if there are not neighbors that that you feel comfortable with, who are the people that you do feel comfortable with? So maybe if you have children and your children go to a school and you feel comfortable with some of the children's friends and their families, maybe that becomes the people that you use for your supports. If you've got family, you can use them for your supports. But it's kind of thinking about who are the important people to you in your life and how can you incorporate them into your plan. But I'd highly recommend, if you've got neighbors that you're interested in interacting with, start by inviting them over to dinner or inviting their children over to dinner so that you can get to know the kids and then the family. If you've got a neighborhood that's strong and supportive, that's going to be the best thing that you can hope for.
Okay, great. So with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and stop questions. We have a couple minutes, and I know William has an end here to the PowerPoint. I do want to express my extreme gratitude for everybody joining us today. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and listen. If we can ever be of help for anybody, please let us know. We are definitely here to do that. Anthony and Carol, thanks for a great presentation. And William, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Yeah, and I was in the process of answering a question or two for some folks, letting them know that the certificate will be coming in a thank you email, as I mentioned earlier. But no worries. We can go ahead and wrap us up today so that we can get folks along. And I want to thank everyone again for joining today's webinar. And please be mindful that you all can join us for an upcoming webinar with our colleagues with SHIFT that is scheduled for September 24th. This webinar is indeed titled Trauma and Brain Science, Why Can't I Think My Way Out of This? This SHIFT webinar is again on September 24th. The registration link is live on this current slide that you have in front of you, and is live in the PowerPoint that you download as well. You may contact OJDP's NTTAC through the website displayed on this slide. You can stay up to date on the latest information by signing up for NTTAC's TTA listserv. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook at OJJDP TTA. You may contact OJDP via the help desk by contacting using the following information on this slide. Do you have a training and technical assistance need? If so, please visit OJJDP's TTA 360 platform to submit a request for help. You may do so on the link on this slide. As a reminder, this webinar will be posted on both SHIFT's website and also on NTTAC's YouTube page, where you can also, on our page, view archived webinars. For transcript and supporting materials, please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. Please take a few moments to review this disclaimer. And lastly, we would appreciate if you could take about 5 minutes to complete the feedback survey. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Have a great afternoon. Goodbye.
The host has left the meeting, so at this time, the meeting will come to an end.